Ex-wife's wedding destroyed by her boring. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. He left me a sticky note and a reheated slice of lasagna. That was his entire farewell. No heated argument, no tears, just her handwriting on a scrap of paper. You'll find someone who matches your rhythm someday. I needed fireworks, so next to it, she left a casserole dish still wrapped in last night's foil. That was 4 years ago. Now, I hold a hand-addressed wedding invitation with gold embossed text that says, Carter and James Turner request the honor of your presence. My name's on the RSVP line, but honestly, it feels more like she's inviting me to a book club instead. Instead of the grand unveiling of her new chapter, she wants me to see her wearing white once more, to sit quietly in the back pew and marvel at what she's traded up for. What she doesn't realize is that her stage no longer belongs. To her, I filled out the RSVP card. I marked down gladly attending, no +1 needed for distraction. See, always thought silence was a sign of weakness, that walking away without slamming the door showed boredom. But silence has depth. It pulls people in, makes them lean forward trying to fill that space. She'll find out only too soon that silence is heavy and it carries gravity. I booked a flight under my middle name, rented a car 2 towns over, even bought a new pair of shoes, though I won't be breaking in those heels before the wedding. She set the stage. I'll give her that. But I'll let her take center spotlight. Before we go any further, I've got a small favor to ask. If you've made it this far, nearly 98% of viewers haven't clicked that subscribe button yet. We're crafting raw, honest stories here, sharp and real, and your single click could help us reach that first 10-0. It's not just about numbers, it keeps us motivated to dig deeper and sharpen our craft. Thanks for supporting. Back to, she always hated how I folded my shirts, said I was obsessed with neatness. But she left. In such a rush that day, she didn't notice the storage unit key tucked inside her old jewelry box, or the ledger I'd moved to the garage, or the backup drives labeled 2012 taxes which weren't taxes at all. That key started it all. The second was the name I used, Malden, young, ambitious, founding some tech startup that sold software to track empathy in HR departments. Oh, and he had that charm. The kind that makes your mother flirt and your best friend raise an eyebrow. He and got engaged within 18 months. She posted a caption, took a leap, fell into something real. I printed it and framed it not out of heartbreak but precision. Didn't know, or perhaps she still doesn't, that her father and I once faced each other in a federal courtroom. Same suits, silent, the verdict hanging between us. I remember the way he looked down when that judge delivered the sentence. His jaw twitched, a flicker of recognition, admitting he'd been caught. Now he's walking his son down the aisle. I arrived 2 days before the wedding, small-town church, brick walls, ivy creeping. I drove past the place once, then again. Naively, she probably didn't expect me to show. I doubt she thought I'd bother. She likely sent that invitation figuring I'd ignore it. Or maybe she hoped I'd come crawling, full of regrets. Either way, she badly misjudged. I checked into a motel on the 2nd floor, no view, pulled the curtains tight, ironed my shirt, and laid out a sealed envelope I'd hidden inside my jacket lining. A copy of the same court documents her future father-in-law never thought would resurface. Signed, notarized, forgotten by most, but not by me. I slept like a soldier on recon, ready for the morning. I dressed slow, no tie, crisp cuffs, a pocket square the exact shade of her wedding invitations. Call it performative closure beige, like the sand before the storm. I drove to the church, parking 3 blocks away, walking the rest of the way through a Sunday storm. They say revenge is sweet when served cold, but that's a lie. Revenge is best served silent. Like a man you thought was history, quietly sitting in the audience, watching your delusions unfold, fully aware that the real final act belongs to him. Didn't shed a tear when she left. You could tell she was smiling, that smug, satisfied little smile she always wore after winning an argument she rarely understood. She stood in the doorway wearing a silk blouse I'd never seen, clutching a Louis suitcase still tagged with a ribbon. Hair curled, lips done, none for me. "You're too safe, Thomas," she said like she was diagnosing a mild allergy. "I want passion, not spreadsheets." I stared at her heels, 4-inch heels, hurting her arches, she always said. But apparently, excitement made a woman bulletproof. She didn't slam the door, just clicked it shut like she was heading out for a spa weekend, not ending a 17-year marriage. No affairs, no yelling, just a quiet exit. She moved in with before the coffee cooled, a 30-something startup guy, full of charm and quick jokes. I saw a video of him at some tech conference once, acting like a magician, selling change to a crowd desperate for disruption. Must have been there or maybe in his hotel room. Hard to tell. I didn't fight, didn't call, didn't post cryptic quotes about growth or healing. Instead, I deleted her contact, set my calendar on fire, and made a different kind of to-do list, in silence. Because never understood that. I don't make scenes, I build systems. She thought she erased me, but she only archived me. Now she's walking down a marble aisle in an overpriced dress, arm in arm with a man who once spent 3 months trying to sue the federal government for silence, his name still buried in sealed court files. In 2001, that was me, standing in court, refusing to settle, nearly losing everything because I refused to be bought off. That was me, after all. Doesn't know men like him don't read history, they rewrite it with daddy's money and PR spin, but his father remembers. We shared more than a courtroom, he saw that I was something more than a cog, I was the machine. Now he'll watch his son say, "I do," in a church so grand it's almost laughable, restored cathedral, town too small for marble lions. Loves theatrics, sure. Her guest list probably includes Pilates friends who said she looked glowing during her separation. Crypto bros, maybe her sister, who once drunkenly told me I was the best thing that ever happened to. But honestly, I was boring until I was. I arrived early, as I always do. Efficiency is controlled patience. I sat in the second-to-last pew, perfect vantage. The stained glass cast an amber glow through the chapel, warm and biblical. Probably thinks it flatters her complexion. Guests poured in like confetti, laughter, handshakes, envy masked with perfume. It was exactly what she wanted, curated chaos pretending to be spontaneous. Then the doors swung open. She entered like she owned the place, head high, smile calculated, her dress but sculpted to look effortless. Always the queen of appearance. When the whispers hushed, she locked eyes with, and I swear I saw that flicker of triumph, the "I told you so" moment passing between them. She was walking toward victory, her little human trophy for her grand exit. Somewhere in her stride she tugged her veil and she saw me. She didn't recognize me, that version of me no longer exists, but Charles Malden, his father, saw me. He was sitting front, eyes sharp, clutching the program like a lifeline. Beside him sat a woman, probably his wife, maybe an assistant. It didn't matter. What mattered was the moment he saw me, and I saw the flicker, faint but real. A twitch of the jaw, a subtle shake of his fingers as he clenched the program, trying to hold back whatever storm was brewing from the past. He knew. I saw it hit him like a shrapnel burst, the courtroom, the judge's gavel, my voice on the stand, the engineer who dared to say no deal. His face drained, pale, pupils shrinking, a vein pulsing on his forehead. He handed the papers slowly to like a detonator, looked at it silent. Then his gaze shifted, the weight of realization sinking in. He looked at still frozen, like she'd rehearsed this moment in dreams. He didn't raise his voice, didn't cry, just said, "You need to sit down," and everything went still. The church went quiet again. Shoulders twitched, hands trembling just a bit, like he'd stumbled onto a trap he didn't see coming. He stared at me like trying to match a stranger to a nightmare. "Do I know you?" he asked, voice steady but body trembling. I shook my head. "Not yet, but we've been circling the same fire." He flinched as if those words hit a nerve. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. I reached into my coat and produced an envelope, old, sealed with wax. "This," I said softly, "is for your father's eyes only. Read it in private, then decide if you want to go through with this today." Hesitated, but Charles moved fast, snatched the envelope before his fingers could reach it. He didn't say a word, only stared at me like I'd just appeared from nowhere. He opened the envelope right there, no hesitation, tearing it open, eyes dead serious. His face drained visibly. Pupils shrank. The vein on his forehead throbbed, counting down. When he finished, he handed the papers to gently, respectfully, like a dead man's handoff. Reed, silent, then looked up at still motionless, frozen like she'd rehearsed for a perfect, idyllic wedding. He didn't raise his voice, didn't tear up, just calmly said, "You need to sit down." The church again fell into dead silence. Hands were trembling now, subtle but unmistakable, like he was standing on a field of traps. He stared at me, trying to recall a stranger from a nightmare, trying to make sense of all this. "Do I know you?" he asked again, voice steady but shaking. I nodded. "No, but your father does." I held the envelope out again, same seal, heavy with the weight of time, of history. "You should open this privately, decide if today's your day." He glanced at his father, who was already marching toward a small side room, grabbed the envelope and stormed out, leaving silence behind. No words, no questions, just an ominous hush. The crowd shifted uneasily, made a move, he not going in there without me. She reached forward, but the maid of honor, fierce and stubborn, blocked her, whispered sharply, "She's serious." Looked stunned, voice trembling. "Are you serious?" The maid nodded, for a moment froze, her hands trembling. Then, like a mannequin stiffening, she stood rooted in the aisle, caught, confused, furious. Took a step toward the side door just 3 feet away. "Not quite a question," he said evenly. "Yes," I replied calmly. "We just need to know if we're on the same page." He looked at his father again, who was already marching ahead, grabbed the envelope without hesitation. No words, just a cold, deliberate act. Charles pulled toward a side room off the main hall, no questions, no explanations. The crowd murmured. Someone coughed. One groomsman checked his phone, then shrugged. Tried to follow. "He's not going in there alone," she insisted. But the maid, the Herculean bridesmaid, blocked her path. Whispered to her, stern and firm. She hesitated, shoulders trembling, clutching her purse like a shield. The maid shot her a look. "I'm serious." Frozen, looked like she was deciding whether to run or stay. For 10 minutes the church clock ticked, each second like a countdown. Then the door swung open. Emerged first, face pale, hollow, like he'd just learned gravity was a myth. Charles followed, rubbing his face, tired beyond age. Didn't go back to the altar. He didn't look at the priest. Instead, he marched straight to slow, firm. The room waited, tried to smile. "Is everything okay?" Stared at her, then into his own heart, and finally, quiet but sharp, he said, "You need to sit down." Gasps rippled through the church, blinked. "What?" she asked. Turned away from her, toward the guests, toward me, the silent one in the back. And in that moment he understood. Not fully, maybe, yet, but one thing was clear: this wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a reckoning. The envelope wasn't thick, but it was heavy. Every page inside had been touched by time, lawyers, silence, decades of secrets sealed in wax. Domestic court documents sealed, dated 1996, details of securities fraud for $2 million in penalties. The case ID, the defendant, Holdings LLC. The internal testimony by me, Thomas, at the time just a 29-year-old analyst. I flagged strange ledger entries, triple-stacked vendor IDs, untraceable transactions, payout chains with no locks. I escalated, and when it reached the senior partners, the walls started shifting. Deadlines vanished, meetings canceled. I was offered hush money, consulting in Florida, but I refused. Next came subpoenas, meetings with government agents in covert rooms. And across from me, sitting more than once in the back, was Charles Malden, the silent shadow, never named in the lawsuit but always present. A man who played the unseen partner with no fingerprints, no emails. I watched as his empire shrank that year but never collapsed, because he did what men like him always do: liquidated fast, rerouted assets, distanced himself. Then he reinvested into something smaller, less traceable, a new venture. That was Malden Metrics, beloved startup founded in a garage. But the garage came with a $300, $0 wire transfer 2 months before. That's what was in the envelope, not just the old court files, but the settlement agreement, confidential, sealed, one with his signature, nullifying any claim to clean money, to the very assets used to build that empire. Built her life around control, but that prenup she touted as her masterpiece. She probably didn't even fully understand it, had an out. Under asset origin and disclosure, it said that if any assets related to illegal or fraudulent sources were discovered, her claim to those assets would be. Thought she could protect herself, but I knew the truth. If the original seed money for Malden Metrics was tied to fraud, then every dollar she thought she owned was contaminated. The joint accounts, investments, luxury items, all suspect. And she couldn't argue otherwise. Her own prenup kept her trapped. I watched her that day, trying to keep her composure as whispered something sharp in her ear. Her face twitched, the faintest flicker of panic. She looked toward Charles, maybe hoping he'd save her. But Charles was already defeated, exposed by the truth. His silence, once bought and buried, now just debris, stepped back, voice shaking. "This is ridiculous. It doesn't matter anymore. We're married in spirit, that's what counts." But even her voice cracked. Just looked at her. "You used to ask me what made me different," he said softly. "It was always the money, the energy, the edge." Nodded, realizing the trap was closing around her. He pointed to the envelope lying on a nearby chair. "That's what the edge looks like," he said quietly. For the first time, her shoulders sagged. She looked small, nothing radiant, no victory, just a woman cornered, believing she was dancing through someone else's story. She didn't see that I was the one writing the ending. The silence grew teeth. Standing at the altar, shoulders tight, hands trembling, looked out at the crowd. Friends, colleagues, influencers, investors, all witnesses to what was supposed to be his triumph. Instead, they saw a man on the edge. He cleared his throat. The priest shifted uneasily. "Shall we continue?" "No," said, voice steady but resolute. "We're not getting married today." The words cut through the room like a guillotine. "Gasped a real one," she said, voice trembling, not from the rehearsed speeches or the staged tears, but from shock. That was her moment of disbelief, an exhale she couldn't control. "What?" she asked, stepping forward. "No, this can be fixed." He raised a hand, halting her. She froze mid-step. The room murmured. One guest giggled nervously, then stopped. The organist just froze. I stayed silent, frozen, tracking everything. I didn't blink, didn't look away. I turned and calmly walked out as if the ceremony was over, because it was. His voice called after me, "Thomas, what the hell did you do?" But she couldn't follow. Not in those heels, not with her pride trailing behind her like a train. I paused once outside, the only moment I took to glance back at the altar. That's where she had built her fantasy, brick by delusional brick. She designed this whole production, a final middle finger to our past, a victory lap dressed in ivory silk. But it crumbled in silence as I stepped into the cool air. A partner, an accomplice, waited behind me. Charles Malden, hands deep in his coat pockets, clutching the envelope like a verdict. "You never forgot," he said softly. Not mocking, not angry, just exhausted. Men like us understand that the past doesn't just fade, it calculates. I turned to him. "No," I said softly, "but I forgave. That's why I came, not for revenge, nor rage, no gleeful shouting or staged dramatics. I came to close the book on a story that started when she called me too safe, too dull. She missed the silence, the kindness, the subtle power of control. She thought the world was won by loud voices, bright explosions, quick moves. But true power is knowing when to speak and when to vanish. So I left, without a backward glance, without applause, just walking away. The church doors groaned shut behind me, sealing the wreckage inside. To me, it was no longer my mess. It never really was. By Monday's wedding had morphed into a cautionary tale, wrapped in designer lace, a story I saw unfold online. First, anonymous blips on a lifestyle blog called Runaway Groom at Whispering Pines, about a wedding that never happened. Then within 2 days, the story exploded. An investor pulled funding. Vendors posted bitter tick about drone chrysanthemums and vanished. Instagram, once a curated display of brunch and motivational hashtags, went dark. She spent the past year building her brand as a lifestyle coach for women who refused to settle. She used to sign off with "upgraded." Now people commented, "downgraded sweetheart." Disappeared from the scene, rumors spreading that he'd fired his father, his trusted advisor. The family trust was under review. Had already quit her job months ago, spent her days decorating their house, draining accounts on glasses, imported bathtubs. She moved out before the wedding, let her lease run out, told her landlord she was retired, even with student debt. She was couch surfing, begging to borrow her credit card until the venue sued for breach of contract. Wasn't on the hook, that was. Neither Charles nor answered her calls. She spun the story it's mutual. We realized we're better as friends, the timing was off. But social circles, they're sharks, they don't forget. By Friday, she sent me a single message, no emojis, no punctuation. What did I ever do to you to deserve this? I stared at it, thinking about her nerve, flaunting her new life, making a show of her conquest, all while she left behind the quiet we shared, our dinners, our routines, the way we used to be. Deep down, I knew she knew. I didn't reply. Silence had always been the start of this story. It would be its end, too. It was raining softly the last time I saw her. Not the cinematic rain with thunder and lightning, but a gentle drizzle that blurred the skyline, quieting the city. I was at the library Tuesday, my quiet day, hardwood tables, overpriced espresso, pages turning in peaceful rhythm. I liked it because no one bothered me. I could think alone. Until she called my name, Thomas, her voice small, not the I remembered. The woman who leaned over a balcony at some engagement party and whispered I wasn't built for greatness. This person wore flat shoes and a raincoat, probably not expecting to be seen. She sat down before I invited her and I didn't flinch. I simply closed my book and looked up. Her eyes were glassy, not from the rain. I loved you once, she whispered, fingers curling around her purse like she was trying to hold herself together. I sipped my cold coffee. You loved the version of me you didn't even understand, I told her. She blinked. What does that mean? It means you fell in love with a mirror. When I no longer reflected your wishes, you broke it, calling the pieces growth. She fell silent. I added, I was. Never the problem, you just weren't patient enough to see the design. Lips parted but no words came. She looked exhausted, the kind of tired you can't fix with serum or exercise. The tired that comes from betting everything on and losing. I wasn't trying to hurt you back then, she said softly. Doesn't mean I didn't. I nodded and she looked down, trying to smile, warped and fragile. I thought if I built the perfect life, it would prove something to you, to everyone. It did, I replied, just not what you expected. I left my half-finished coffee. She didn't stop me, she didn't plead. She just watched as I turned toward the door. Outside, through the window, I saw her reflection, the same small figure watching me go, like the ending of a film she'd envisioned differently. She never saw me again because I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to rage or ruin. I simply ended her story with a smirk and a suitcase. I ended mine with silence.